Hey, this is Russ McClellan, Small Towns Unscripted. I'm at the Lake Chelan Community Center. I don't know if you guys can tell. We just taped another episode here, and I just wanted to tell everybody, this is a place you should come down to. There's an office building, coffee shop, Boys and Girls Club. There's a banquet room that we're doing the podcast in. It's just such a cool location, such a great place. Oh, Mary Bell, she's like, come on down. That's how we keep the lights on. So I just encourage everybody, if you haven't been to the Chelan Community Center, come on down. And also thank you to the Chelan Community Center to let us film our podcast here. All right, peace out. All right, Thomas Tupling, how you doing, my friend?
I'm well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming on this podcast. Have you seen any of our...
Yeah, I have been watching them. I put them on my way to work.
Okay.
Can follow along.
Which platform do you follow on, like YouTube or Spotify or...
YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how there's so many platforms. And I get messages like, I had a problem with Spotify because it wasn't uploading, and somebody's like, dude, get it fixed.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know it was a problem. But I appreciate it. It's how do you feel about it? What do you think it's doing?
Yeah, I think with me working down here too and interacting with some of those folks, and then it's like, people are just people, and then you do find out a little bit of history, or like, wow, I didn't know that, or I really enjoyed the Evans, just kind of fun. And then Dan Beardsley, I really enjoyed that one too.
He's the godfather of land planning. He's been through a lot, like 40 years as a surveyor, and so many projects, and so many burning torches and pitchforks. And
and the changes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I see that in a lot of these, even the old contractors, is like, think before your generation came around, kid, I was laying pipe, and you didn't need permits for all this stuff, or we just got stuff done.
Yeah, my first project was actually 3 miles south of the Beebe Bridge in my mid-20s. And I was at the county, so that would have been, I graduated high school in 87, so that would have been like, whatever it was, 90s. And I went down there and didn't know anything about short platting or developing, and I had an orchard, and there were so many rattlesnakes and so many rocks, I finally was like, I'm done farming. I'm gonna have to plant houses. This isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
It was the only orchard available at the time, so I bought it from my dad's buddy. And I went down there and they said, well, you need a site plan, idiot,
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, what's that, and I go, you gotta tell us where the water is and the power is. So I literally took a piece of paper out and I drew the plat map, and I said, the water's here, there you go, signed it. I go, there you go. And then within a month or two, I had a short plat.
Yeah.
Now, although Douglas County's, as far as workability, it seems like they're like the most logical, and this more efficient. But boy, short plat could take a year, 2.
Yeah.
And it's always a challenge. But we're going to get into that. But I want to kind of go back in time. Like, you grew up in Mansfield.
That's correct.
And where did your like grandparents come from?
Well, I have generations in Mansfield. I was born here in Chelan and grew up in Mansfield. Would have been my great-grandmother. I mean, she's in her hundreds, passed away in Mansfield. My father's side of the family originally came from Arkansas and moved out here to work in the orchards. Mm-hmm. And they were up in the Twist Methow area.
Okay.
And then, my great-grandparents were like mobile preachers. So they were down the Yakimas and moving all around, and then kind of started in Mansfield. And we kind of just stuck around. All my siblings still live there. Cousins. Yeah. There ain't no whole lot around with the last name. I think.
Like Henry?
Yeah, Henry's a cousin.
Yeah, Henry. And you graduated high school at 2000?
2000. So
what was it like if people, Mansfield's still a fairly, small town. What was it like for you growing up in Mansfield?
I actually think I was blessed. Well, it's funny. A lot of people, older couples that moved to Mansfield from Chelan, say this is what Chelan was like, 30 years ago. And you're a young kid, and we worked on the farm. You drove tractor. You bucked straw bales. You built fence. But like when you're a young kid, you're playing sports, riding your pedal bike. You run downtown. All the old people are sitting there reading the newspaper in front of the post office, and they'd always give the young kids little. Tell you a joke or trick you, or, it was just still it's safe. You never had to deal with the drugs. You never had to deal with the crime. Everyone's really, I think, And it's probably one of the smaller towns still that are holding that over, that community feeling where you do know everybody, and you don't need really law enforcement because someone pulls up to your neighbor's house, you're going to knock on the door, you're calling them, right? It's still a self-regulated, but being like a kid, I mean, from building rafts and floating ponds to covering yourself in plastic bags and duct tape to, we were young and wild. I mean, riding pedal bikes, we did newspaper routes, my buddies were jumping and run around in the cars, delivering newspapers. I mean, it was
sneaking down to Chelan.
Yeah, sneaking down the Chelan in the summertime.
Having fun.
Yeah, it was a great childhood.
Yeah, so it is funny how Mansfield is probably in a mini time warp still, and it's a good example of how I have an econ background in finance, and one of the principles is if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah. Because
stagflation. I mean, these are things that can really, eventually, especially a small town, can end a town.
Mm-hmm.
If nobody ever moves in, and eventually everybody dies, and there's no industry, and there's, it's hard. So, but Mansfield's managed to be in a little time warp.
Yeah, I've done tons of research. You look at Douglas County as a whole, and really you got Birchport on the Columbia River, you got Waterville, the county seat, and all the towns in the plateau have failed. I mean, St. Andrews and Del Rio and Lemoyne, and you just list all the towns that have collapsed. Withrow is probably the most recent. You have Douglas, you had, those towns all collapsed, and Mansfield is still staying strong, but I think there is some growth. We've recently seen brand new homes, 6 brand new homes being built, and working down here and watching the change in the value versus a 25-minute drive. I mean, I see these affordable homes going in. They're still, 1.3 million, and those are tax dollars, those are local dollars, charity. And I've reached out to a whole bunch of housing trusts and like Link Bus, and thinking, geez, really, if you could establish a new road and some new homes and get Link to help deliver that workforce to Chelan, I think, and its locations, what saved it from talking to like Cooley City and all these other towns, Wilbur, all of them, right? And the number one key is Mansfield's so close to Chelan.
Yeah.
Like that's a 25, 30-minute drive, and then McNeil had always been kind of the issue, and now they've, reamped that.
Yeah, it's funny because, there's such a big challenge when you have a town that grows and changes. I always said growing up, because this is my 37th year in real estate, so pretty much my entire adult life after college has been in real estate here. So I've seen a lot of changes. I grew up on a little apple orchard in Manson, back when 10 acres could raise 3 kids. I don't know if 10,000 acres can raise 3 kids anymore, but I found myself farming again, which is interesting. Bought a couple houses that came with an orchard on it. But in real estate, it's a blessing and a curse. You have this diversified economy. We used to have the ag base that was strong. And I always joke, as guys that go into a small school, like, I had 22 kids in my class, right? And there was 13 above me and like 20 below me. So it's like 100 kids in high school. And I always try to explain on almost every podcast that I get a chance. I wish people knew what it was like in sports in high school, because the tradition and the generational rivalries that existed in all the small towns that are around was different, and we didn't have to drive 3 hours to play. We had all of the schools that were strong, and that diversified economy, and the tourism sector is a giant part of it. And I'm seeing a lot of people anti that. Chelan County passed that regulation 5 years ago that as of September, even if you have an STR permit, you can't sell your home with it. That grandfather clause is over. And they made it fairly difficult. You can only apply June and July. There's a cap on it. You can't use it that year. So what a lot of people don't realize is that eliminates DSCR loans, because you can't count the income. You have to wait another year. And so that's about I don't know what exactly it is per area, but it's about 90% cap. They're reducing it by 90%. And to me, that's aggressive, because I like to say, what would this valley be like without tourism? How many jobs would we lose? How many people that can afford to live here, even though that's a very big deal and it's very difficult? Is that going to move the meter, or is it going to help or hurt people, because there's a lot of people employed thanks to that 80% of the money a business makes in that summertime month. So I'm always trying to see both sides of that for sure, because it has changed a lot.
Well, you're talking STRs. Well, look what Douglas County's doing. They're not regulating it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, in a true free economy, it regulates itself, because if I have 12 units that are being rented out and someone else comes in and builds a better one, the STRs, most of them, they want a unique experience, because you have the Hobbit house on McNeil. That thing is booked 3 years in advance, and that lady above Orondo put those 5 in with the big swings. Well, if I had my little STR, now people aren't renting it out, because this is a better experience. So it does self-regulate.
Yeah, supply and demand.
Yeah, and you think that these houses, I never understood that if I had a house and it is only lived in 6 months out of the year, and is it more valuable sitting there empty with nobody coming to your restaurants, no one using your rivers, no one going hiking, no one spending money, but there's no regulation on your house sitting vacant, but boy, you can't rent that out to bring people into your community. That's always been a kind of a strange concept for me.
It is, and I don't think, here's another little irony. I had a house on the lake because they couldn't rent it out anymore. There's a buddy I went to high school with. He did very, very well, lives out on the East Coast. And he said, hey man, what's going on with this? This was like 5 years ago. And he goes, what's going on with this STR code? And I go, well, they're going to put a cap on it. You better get involved if you want to. He's like, well, I love my family, but I'm not going to be going through all the stuff that you have to do. So I'm going to sell it. And the irony was I sold it for $3.2 million in 5 hours and closed it in 5 days. And that buyer, the only reason that buyer bought it, it wasn't an SDR. And I probably pulled, according to all my realtor buddies and my research, I think I got them $500,000 to $500,000 more than it was worth, because it wasn't an SDR. Because the real money, like the next level money, they like that. They like that there's no SDRs. So it's like this counterproductive, counterintuitive thing you wouldn't have thought would have happened. You would have thought, well, sure, if it's an Airbnb, potentially it's going to be worth more money. That is also true. And then you get to another level. And if you get to another level, you end up, I always use Jackson Hole as a good example, like where the billionaires are kicking out the millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, I think people that have the conversation about affordable housing, wouldn't it be logical if we could list all of the reasons why the affordable housing problem, the essential worker housing problem exists, instead of just kind of picking one aspect and arguing about it without looking at the full economic reach? I mean, start with the land use regulations, start with lead arsenic, start with the zoning code, start with the conditional use permits, start with the energy code to build houses, start with the supply and demand of contractors, the labor laws, the housing laws. I mean, by the time, I used to say this a lot, and Dan Beardsley and I had that great conversation that we just replayed. I used to say that acquisition and materials kind of were the driver on what you needed to build or could afford to build or what it would cost. Now that's not it. Of course, it's more expensive, but it's the bureaucracy and the lack of predictability in the bureaucracy. That lack of predictability is what eliminates investors. Because if I joke and I go, if you can go down 6 months into you buy some land, you think you know the code, and then you're halfway through a deal and they go, oh, by the way, you're good. Just build a sidewalk to Seattle and we'll prove it. Like, what? I mean, it's a joke, but you can see where you layer supply constraints, you layer the challenges. And at the end of the day, is an SDR really going to change things, or is it going to just eliminate jobs if you stop it? So to me, that's an interesting debate, and I'm not saying that it hasn't increased values, because it does. The buyer pool increases. But if we're looking at essential worker housing between like 60% and 120% of median income that work locally, A, there's a percentage of those jobs are going to go away. And B, is the 4.9 million people that in a free America can come here and work from home, is that going to really stop the price point? Is it going to lower below $500,000? That's not.
Because you have just as many houses sitting vacant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the hurdle here. I mean, I read this big study about Mississippi and Washington, right? And so when you can build a house at the same cost of houses are being sold as, then your market is not as problematic as
Right.
we're experiencing, right? But here, I mean, it's like, geez, I just want to build my house. And it's like, man, by the time all the troubles and the time and the environmental and all the other agencies, it's so your supply gets kind of shaken up for that. And I look at, and like the STR thing, we had an STR in Mansfield. And so everyone who comes to Lake Chelan isn't just a millionaire, right? There's a mom over there with 3 kids who wants to experience Lake Chelan, and she says, geez, I come here, it's $1,200 a night. She gets in her car, she drives to the lake, her kids get out, they go play in the water, they have their fun Chelan experience, maybe putt golf or go get some ice cream. They load back up in their car and they drive to their STR. Well, there's a gentleman in Mansfield that had an STR, and they rented that for a quarter of the price, because the land was, a lot's 20 grand versus 250,000. He had this cute little home, had the flyers, had it set up cute, and they would stay there, and they would come to Chelan, enjoy their day, and drive home for 30 minutes. And for them, they said $1,200 a night versus $400 a night was a substantial difference. And so they got to enjoy Lake Chelan, but couldn't afford the cost, right? And so that's the balancing act too, is when Douglas County, just across the river, you can have STRs. I think at some point Chelan County might be like, wow, they're coming using all of our amenities and they're making all the money. So there's definitely a balancing act between the two.
Yeah, and even if you don't we're at the community center. Thanks for the community center letting me do this. So lookouts right there. I always tell people, if you took away, let's just say you got your wish, especially some of the organizations out there that are anti-everything. If you got your wish and the Campbell's family left and the lookout disappeared, let's look, and we got rid of every STR. Oh, and by the way, the apple industries are by and large tanking, including 125-year company and the Evers family just sold day after filing bankruptcy. Wonder why they did that. Wonder why I get calls from small farmers all the time. There's just no way. So let's just say you guys, the people win. There's no more short-term rentals. There's no ag jobs. We're seeing more and more orchards gone. It's not because people want to have no orchards. That's the opposite of what they want. If we actually looked in the future and said, where does that put us? How are we doing? How are we doing now? Do you think that's going to be more people leaving the town or less people leaving the town that have grown up here, that have lived here? To me, it's a pretty obvious answer. So, of course, balance is important, but one of the things that a lot of people haven't talked about is we have like 43 wineries. We have a bunch of restaurants. We have a couple hardware stores. We have, coffee shops. We have a lot of these commercial business, which everybody seems to enjoy. And if you're one of those winery owners that said, well, I'm okay with doing this, even though there was 20 wineries, 30 wineries, 40 wineries, or 5 restaurants, 10 restaurants, 15 restaurants, and we had a trajectory of where we could see that the heads in the beds in this 100 days of summer was going to grow. So I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to fight all the fights I got to fight, all the conditional use work, all the environmental work, all the construction work, all the labor issues, and I'm going to try to make a living in 100 days, because 80% of the trough is 100 days of summer. I mean, that's 80% of the income for most businesses, and I've studied a lot of wineries. Now, they just flatlined that. So what you're going to see next, and I'm looking at a lot of books, it's going to be just like the apple industry. So now all of a sudden we don't have vineyards anymore, we don't have apples anymore, because we just cut off the money supply, to your point. So to me, I don't know, it's not black and white. It's like, I call it the kaleidoscope of real estate love.
Yeah.
It's always, and there's people are very passionate, and keyboard warriors are alive and well. And I get it. It's a hard issue. We have a complex society. But anyway.
I think a lot of it is that people, they might not choose to live there. It's like, but you don't have to live there. You got to consider it a resort village, right? There is not a lot of full-time residents there, but that value of land is like $500 million.
The tax base from that is.
It's like one of the largest in all of Chelan County, right? Yeah. And it's on a hill. It's no different than a resort or a big hotel chain, right? And it creates a lot of revenue. There's a lot of benefits in the community that are derived from that. And then you have the taxation on all those units, and they contribute to so much other amenities and things that people don't see. And so it's easy to criticize something. But I think even this community, right, they're kind of torn. There's like two groups, even like on the federal level, they're just constantly fighting and negative, right? And I think if all those people actually just gave the other side a chance to talk about and explain themselves and realize that I think we all have one thing in common, and it's hard to say it, the problem's in Olympia. You know, these guys think that this, like, these municipalities or the town of Mansfield or city of Chelan, like, you're just dreaming this stuff up. Usually you get an RCW that states you have to make this correction in 2 years or else this is the law. Your hands are tied. The idea of small communities and individual planning is kind of dead.
Yeah, who talked a lot about that was Doug England, who served three terms as a county commissioner, still on the planning commission, 45-year manager of Manson Growers, just had his podcast. And he said that you'll have a lot of common sense rules that the constituency likes, the commissions like, and then all of a sudden the state says, oh no, we don't like that.
Yeah, I'm on the Douglas County Planning Commission. That's why I serve with Dan Beardsley, and his wealth of knowledge is incredible. But you know, the 2 ADUs per lot, and there was a lot of people in there upset, like, you guys are going to ruin our neighborhoods. These roads aren't big enough to come in and add all those homes. The utilities, like, what are you guys thinking? It's like, well, hold on, here's the RCW, you know, like, all that energy would have to go to Olympia, right? That's not us making these rules. We have two choices: either accept and modify it very minutely, or here's the RCW. There was no public comment. There was nothing we could do. It's like, that's the new law that we have to enforce. And if you don't, then you're in violation.
Yeah, the agencies that are unelected that have so much power, so much, and police power including, it's fascinating. I mean, when you start talking about deer poop in orchards can be fined, and you don't have a regulation book of how you're going to treat it and when you're going to inspect it, and dogs, deer, like porcupine, like what?
And those regulations usually are recommendations, but the insurance companies won't cover you if you don't follow the recommendations. So it goes back to a lot of power with the insurance companies.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I've lost 2 deals this week over insurance. They're really clamping down. Really, and it's areas that you see a lot of other homes, so you'd be very surprised what's happening to people. I get you. The other one I love is a sagebrush rule.
Oh yeah, that's.
I love that in the city.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was, you know, you look at the critical area, and you have a deer fence, and deer can't get inside it. It's still listed as critical mule deer habitat.
Downtown Chelan.
Yeah, and they're like, wait, you pretty much have, but you can put a 6-foot fence up, and so the deer have to, like, drive the road, use their blinker, and then go into town and get ran over. They're always getting hit. And then go up on this hill and lay by the sagebrush. Like, make that make sense. That's always been kind of frustrating for me, but I'm a big wildlife advocate. Yeah. And I'm around them, and I've been with the wildlife my entire life, farming, seeing the birds, seeing the deer, watching the, you know what I mean? You're a part of you, and you want to protect them, but it has to make sense.
Yeah, it's just overreaching. It's death through 1,000 cuts, and that, at the end of the day, you know. And I also we'll get off this topic because I could go all day. But it's funny how my friends, you know, have been here a long time. If you're not in real estate or if you're not in politics, all you hear is what you hear. Most of the time, there's a lot more information, like you said about Olympia. There's a lot of other forces, but the one I love is like, there's no affordable housing in here. In this town, nobody can afford a house, and I never want to see another house built. Like, okay, how does that work? There is this Econ 101 thing. Like, at the end of the day, unless we put tanks on the tunnel and like forcibly stop people from coming to a nice place, the demand is increasing, most often, always, and the supply, if it decreases, that dictates price. At the end of the day, to your point, it's worth what it's worth in a free economy. So.
Well, like you're talking about the ag sector, like I grew up in ag. My brother took over the family farm. I mean, the way of life of being a farm with your wife coming out and bringing your lunch and your kids are right on the tractor. I mean, like some of my fondest memories of Grandpa and I lifting up the bucket, sitting in the bucket, looking at the North Cascades and just say, you know, he's like, one thing about it is I never had to work a day in my life because I love what I'm doing. Like he loved farming. I mean, that was his life, right? And then, you know, the marriage too. If you don't marry the right lady, you know, that they don't understand the farm life, that could be difficult. But really, if you live in Washington or you live in Idaho, you have to pay more in fuel, you got to pay more in labor, you got to pay overtime, you have all these rules and regulations, and then you go and sell the crop at the same place. Like that's tough, you know? Tough. And I mean, a lot of people or thinking the city of Chelan, or the counties are impacting this agriculture, and it's once again, it's really the arguments in Olympia.
Yeah, Doug England went through it in detail, and I thought it was a great informative podcast. My dad turned out to be true. He always used to say, I don't need to go to Vegas, I'm a gambler, because I farm apples.
Yeah.
And then if I won the lotto, I'd just farm until it was all gone.
Yeah, exactly. Your only boss is God, right?
Yeah.
It rains, it shines, it blows, too much snow, not enough snow.
Yeah, well, I want to get back to your history, because you have an amazing, diversified background that I didn't know. That's one of the reasons I love this podcast, because I've known you a while, but I always get to know people better. So after high school, you went into the military.
Yep.
So what was it that you decided Navy's where I'm
Well,
going?
see, my cousin Caleb, he wanted to be in the Marine Corps, and he was a young Marine, and he was always military. I mean, I really didn't think much. I don't even know if the military would have been for me if it wasn't for my cousin being so hell-bent on joining the military. And then my grandpa was just saying, hey, there's a group called the Navy Seabees, the construction battalion, where you can learn a trade, but then you still get to play, because you're young and ambitious. And I wanted to go special forces. My cousin wanted to go special forces, and he was going to go Marine Recon, and I could be a SEAL, and we could work together. That's why they get you recruited, because most times you can't ever get in those programs if you wanted. So it worked out great. Took the ASVAB, got into the Seabees, and I mean, a lot of them were just a bunch of country boys that come in there, operate equipment, and you get to have field exercises and play with guns, and you're young and patriotic, and that was the ticket for me. And so I went. I mean, he originally was trying to go to the Marine Corps, and so it's kind of my grandpa that kind of convinced me to go into the Navy part of it. And then with the SEALs, I came down here and went scuba diving in '96 and got certified. I mean, we rappelled every tower, every structure, I think, in the county, thinking we were going to train to get in, but you get in.
Yeah.
And so, I joined the Navy, did my 6 years. Luckily I got advanced in boot camp to E2. My first duty station, I ended up being honored grad and distinguished graduate. I got both of them. I'm lucky. So I got to pick my duty station.
Nice.
So I picked, an old guy told me, you get to pick anywhere you want, but you probably want to pick me South Japan. So I didn't even know much about it. And I mean, I'd never been on an airplane. I mean, I got it when I went to boot camp. It was like, here you go. I'm on my first flight to boot camp. Ironically, there was a big thunder. I'd never seen thunder and lightning like that, like you do down in Illinois. Power's out. The whole entire training facility has no power. You're just in a hood. He's sitting in the hallway, getting ready to get your head buzzed. And I ended up signing my paperwork on September 11th.
Oh, wow.
The year before the attack. Wow. And when I was in boot, the USS Cole got bombed, and that's where I think we started making that change to the terrorists, and some of our ComSec started changing. But yeah, next thing you know, I went to, my training was in California. Then I got stationed in Misawa, Japan for 2 years, and then they call it the Green Machine, the battalion. And so I did my 2 years there, and then I was ambitious to go into the battalion, and so you could do a 1 year extension on shore duty. Usually you have to go 4 years battalion, then you get your shore duty. That's kind of your reward. I got it first. And then I checked in battalion, and that's right when I was in September 11th happened on my 1 year, and then boom, NMC-4 was getting ready to go to Iraq.
So you did a couple tours.
Yeah, I did NMC-4 at the beginning of the DMZ and all that stuff, and then came back home and went back again. And
how did that change your perspective?
Well, I'm always kind of a weird thinker. Sometimes I wonder, the United States military ain't no different than the jihadists, right? Because when I was in Okinawa, Japan, my last 6 months in the service, and I studied war at the University of Maryland on campus, and so I got to experience World War II at Okinawa, where some of the most fierce fighting. And you got to go through the tunnels, and you got to read the journals of the military men on their side and the American side, because now we're connected, and how the fog rolled in, the Japanese gods protected them where they could get underneath American airfare. And then American was talking about, how God blocked the fog where they could come in with their aircrafts and bomb the heck out of them. They couldn't see them because of the fog, and you get to see this whole manipulation of warfare, right? And I always thought, we're all freedom fighters ultimately, and they always say, and that you learn is in studying Vietnam, it's no two men ever fight the same war. We all join for different reasons, Oh, I've been curious if you ever just made a list of why people join the military: to get away, to be patriotic, to put on camo and fight for the red, white, and blue. All the I mean, every service member's joining for a different reason. I mean, it's a very few people at 18 sign it. Like, you can be maimed or killed, and you're like, yeah, that sounds like a great deal, and you sign your name. But I mean, I still, this day, I think the greatest thing I did was join the service.
Yeah, what'd you take away from it? Like, what are some of the...
I mean, it's just your exposure. I had some very crappy leadership, and I had some great leadership. I mean, I had friends that, you know, you have friends, but you never have friends like you have in like those situations where it's like you literally have to put your life on the line.
Because you were in combat at a time where there was combat in country that you were...
Yeah, I mean,
after 9/11, I'm sure you were...
Yeah, I mean, we deployed right into Fallujah and Camp Fallujah, and I was on a convoy team, so we'd come out of Kuwait and go up through Fallujah, through Ramadi, up to KV. I mean, you're in a convoy team with 3 guys, and I mean, that's your family. I mean, you go through...
How do you feel about the mental side of it when the combat, you know, you hear so many people struggle?
Well, I think, and I also think there's people who join from all different walks of life, right? I've always thought my success or things I'm good at relates back to Mansfield, right? I mean, you raise a hog for 4-H, it's your friend, I play soccer with it, that you butcher it and you eat it, right? Like, that's a hard thing for a little kid, you know? Yeah, you're out there raising your chickens and then you butcher them, and like, you bond with something, but you get the cycle of life. And I know there were people when the war first kicked off that, I mean, they ended up losing their weapon because there's the whole war and the death, and I mean, they kind of went mental in theater, right? Versus then you're exposed to things that, you know, some of these kids, I mean, I remember at boot camp, a kid looking up, didn't even know what that fog was across an airplane because they couldn't even hardly see the sky, where he grew up in Newark, Jersey, right? Mm-hmm. So he'd never experienced some of the things you do on the farm or ag, but, and I said it impacts everybody differently. I mean, I think everybody has a struggle, and it's, you know, it's not, you know, if you're in the volunteer fire department and you respond to an accident, there's some bloody, horrible things. And I always thought too, it's the fight or flight, right? Like, it's one thing to be engaged, it's another to fear for your life, constantly dying, right? Like, you know, you're sitting here, you're dreaming about being an old man sitting on your rocking chair. In those places, you're just thinking of tomorrow, or, you know, you just in that fear, and so you're fight or flight constantly, and you're a part of, it's like being the stud athlete at Wenatchee Valley, and then just one day you're, you know, 5 states across the world, and you're at home, and your friends have been doing things, and they're kind of in the realm of life, and you go, well, I don't know what that is. I've never seen that movie, and then they're all. It's like none of the stuff they do even matters to you because of what you were experiencing in their life, and you're always kind of like, you're always in your own world, and so you kind of want to be back in the game where
to assimilate is probably challenging. My son did 5 years in the Marine Corps, and he went into recon training, and he made it through. I think it was like the last 2 weeks he got hurt, his shoulder. He had a shoulder problem in football in high school, so he was able to go aviation into the Evil Eye Squadron in the V-22 Ospreys. So he got out as a sergeant, but he was like you said, out of high school, you know, full recon sniper, you know. So. Yeah. And then he realized, and it was really hilarious with him because he grew up on a lake, and so I always thought he could, you know, he's not gonna have any problems with him. He soon realized that the candidates of the kids that were in there that were on the swim team had the best chance of survival because there's so much of that, and in that world that if you don't know how the right technique to swim, so he got lucky, right? And he went overseas. He was on the USS Boxer, and went over there, but he didn't have any combat, so he was pretty fortunate. But even him, no combat, those friendships that he made. I mean, I think if it wasn't for when he got out with Xbox 360 and being able to connect with his old boys, it would have been harder for him because it was a hard transition for him to come back to your point. Oh, you're worried about what? I was just on a V-22 over Iraq, and, you know, just different, right? And so even he had, if somebody's going to be callous and say, well, you didn't have any combat, you're not. No, there were some legit issues that he had to. Took him a minute to get back, and you know, obviously you hear about the suicide rate in veterans.
It's being lonely. I mean, it's like one of my difficult overcomings was that my cousin Caleb was killed by a sniper in Ramadi.
Oh, he was. Sorry to hear that.
And then you take two kids that grew up together. You did everything together, and then you're joining the military, and then like in my mind, it's like I made it home, and he only had 2 weeks left of his deployment, and then he was killed right by a sniper, and then I'm at my aunt's house. I'm going through his possessions, and you know, I'm going through his stuff. Like what was he doing here? And like to go through all that as a family that's so small in a community like that, that was, you know, in my mind, it's like, man, that could be him going through my stuff, right? And then you have this, like people go through this, like, why me? And some of those answers are out of our control, right? We don't get to control that. And so then it's like, I've taken my experience, and when I, you know, anti-war and these different movements of people, and it's like even people in my battalion, right? Or these people are alive through us, right? And there's a reason for it that we don't have any control of that. But so my cousin, with his passing, overcoming that was difficult, sure. and being the one that made it home, and so we do. That's why on Mansfield Play Days we do a car show in his memory every year. And so like this Saturday we're doing the Caleb Powers Memorial Car Show, and you know, I've done a lot of veteran groups, and it's kind of like the veteran never dies until we stop saying his name.
Yeah,
you know,
that's great.
That's kind of the.
Yeah, it's you know, I'm sorry to hear that, and I am one of the things, you know, my dad was drafted into Korea. My son went in. I didn't serve, but I've been so grateful every day. I mean, you got that people like yourself did it, so thank you. I mean, I'm like every day I'm grateful. Like, holy crap, I get it even more. I get to play a game called real estate for. Yeah. I mean, I get literally, it's like the closest thing to high school B8 football there is real estate. I mean, I just, and we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't have it. You know, if the guys weren't doing what the guys are doing, good, bad, or indifferent, it'd be a different.
Like part of me thinks of like if I give you $100, you blow it, but if you earn it for $10 an hour, that $100 you go buy that shirt or that junk food, you're buying it with your life, right? And I think freedom's kind of like that. I think my exposure to, you know, waking up, I tell my kids every day, you're lucky, not because you did anything different, but you were born here. Like you're American, like that's so powerful. I mean, these third world countries that you're exposed to, like I'm from Mansfield, I'm like, you're on these Middle Eastern countries, and it's just their way of life, and it's like him and I are no different as just all humans. Just as luckily I was born here, and protecting what we have, I think, is, you know, very important. And
yeah, I often wish some people that really hate this America, like they really have some despise. I mean, there's some things that we can always get better at, of course, but it'd be kind of interesting if they did ask everybody to go live somewhere for just like 6 months.
Yeah,
just go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, and I had this professor that was, I mean, I first came back and was in college, and this professor said, you know, this is the worst president we've ever had in history, and if you blah, 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 and what we're doing over there is horrendous. And he said, if you agree, raise your hand. And like the whole class raised their hand. I told him, I said, I'm dropping your class. This is horrific. Like, I can't even believe, like, I've heard about you guys at these universities and how foolish you are. And he said, don't quit until you come back tomorrow. He came back and presented, this is the best president, and what we're doing over there is for American freedom and protecting our interest. And if you agree, raise your hand. And I'm like, holy cow. And his whole point was that we have to have some moral character here, and we have to stand for something, and that you can't take this class. And one day it's the one thing, and you all agree with it, and the next day you agree and it's complete opposite. And so that's where we started breaking down. And but first, man, I thought this is horrific.
What a real life experience, like a real good exercise. You know, as you see it in social media, so reactionary, just emotional, no consequences, anonymous. So, just interesting.
I always say that social media is kind of the nemesis of our society, where it's like, I've never seen so many people so confident to be wrong. You know, the lack of knowledge of how things function is just this platform for any.
Yeah, it is. And I say, you know, if someone would just, I really appreciate the people that have strong opinions, but then they also have strong curiosity. Because if you come from a place of curiosity and you want to be informed, then you can have good conversations that could even lead to good debates.
Yep.
Because there's very few things black and white. I mean, it's all a shade of gray. And so there's that. And those people I admire a lot that are willing to, and politicians that are willing to step up and do the work, like you're on the Planning Commission. I always say my hypocrisy I only can say so much because I'm not ever, not into that, you know. But I appreciate those that are. So there's always more to a story. There's always more facts, like we talked about earlier. There's always more that you probably could learn about that may help you make maybe the same decision, but a more informed decision.
Yeah, a lot more layers to just the cover of the book, right?
Yeah. So you were, after the Seabees, then you decided, this is why I love you, you're an adventurous guy. You decided, let's start diving. You got certified, but then you started to work with offshore rigs. You started deep sea diving.
Well, I came back from the service. I went to Wenatchee Valley Community College, and from there, I went back to Iraq as a private contractor. I mean, it's like, wow, you could do what you did in the military, but you get paid a lot more, right?
They write a check.
And so, actually, one of my best friends in Mansfield, we all signed up and flew to Houston, Texas, and off we went to Iraq for a tour.
You're like contracting?
Yeah,
contractor.
Because I mean, it was tough out here, right? Money wise,
Yeah,
and it's like, man, you got to work 2 jobs, use a giant bill, and go to college, right? No one's paying my bills, so I was like, shoot, other than die trying, like let's get after it. And so I went over there and did that, and then I came back and went to WSU. And after WSU, I was doing a poli-sci major, and then I went and took the job in Washington, D.C. with Senator Murray's office, where I really got the taste of American politics. Yeah. And I thought, holy smokes, this is like WWF in the 90s, because when I was a private contractor, it's funny, like when you're in the service, you have levels of leadership, right? I was in E5, but then you as a civilian contractor, you don't have to follow a lot of that crap. You just are there working, so you get to see these generals. And I met, what was his name? Anyways, the ambassador, and I met a lot of great Iraqi people. I mean, you have 240,000 people in one-man votes, and you're like, you're a hero in my book, and that's why I thought Americans who don't vote, it's like this dude dodged bombs and rockets and threatened to be killed, and he said, I didn't care, I just wanted to be able to vote once. So I'm like, and so that's what kind of triggered that whole, like, wow, I'm going to be an ambassador of my country, and I want to, not necessarily the ambassador, but I want to work in poli-sci, and I want to go back to Baghdad, and I want to work with these these amazing people of Iraq that risk their lives to have change, right? But after DC, I'm like, wow, this is it's just it was a lot different than I anticipated. I went to Obama's inauguration. I was Reverend Jackson. I mean, all the people, and I got to meet Eric Holder, and I got to meet all the people at Capitol. But it's like, I don't know if working at this level is really for me. And that's when I jumped ship, and I came back to Washington. And I started attending Ballard diving over in Ballard, Washington.
Yeah, and then you worked once you were certified for deep water diving.
Yeah, so I worked over in Seattle. I mean, Global Diving Salvage, which is an incredible company. But the American union system is set up where if you're a senior diver, right, they always say, I got kids in college, you ain't diving. So you can't break out as an American diver. So the BP spill kicked off the horizon. So I ended up going down the Gulf of Mexico with Global Diving Salvage and working that spill for months.
And what would you do, like a practical day in a spill?
Oh man, we had like a big vessel, and they built like this big boom system, like a skier, and so it had a fin on it, and it kicked it back, and so the boat would be going out and would kick it back, and then have a big boom, and so they were capturing all that oil into these big areas, and then we had like a crab trap with like oil, and so because a lot of that oil would sit at different levels, it wasn't coming up, and so we were just out there pretty much trolling all the oil, and then the Coast Guard light on fire when the weather changed direction, right? So we worked out of Fushan. I went from Texas all the way down to Florida, working offshore. Then I ended up going with, Global kind of traded me to TNT Salvage for a while, and so I jumped on board with them.
Free agent.
Yeah, kind of, where it was kind of a weird deal, and so it's a really nice vessel. And so I went out with that group for quite a while.
So were you just on the boat, or would you actually get in the water?
No, we weren't diving on it. The oil was boiling out. Most divers just went to automatic. Global had all those people, and then they have the environmental division. And so that was kind of whatever they wanted you to do, you're filling a spot.
Wow. Diversified. One thing you told me, thanks for sending me this info, when you were in Belgium, you were part of, what did you mean by you're part of you were there when the terrorist bomb went off?
Yeah, so that global thing with the union, I was emailing this international company because they wouldn't hire Americans because the Jones Act says that they would American law could enforce American rules on foreign entities, right? And that was, Jones Act was passed, like I say, most laws with good intentions. And so I was trying to get a job, and they said, sorry, we don't hire Americans because of the Jones Act. You can sue us. So, I mean, I called them and emailed them once a week and was like, I'm from a town of 350 people. I don't even know a lawyer. Like, I just want a job.
I don't even know a lawyer.
Yeah, and so he middle of the night, he's Indian. He calls me up and he's like, do you want to work for us? And I was like, yep. And he's like, well, I'm going to give you the bottom of the barrel wage. And I think he was trying to deter me. I said, I don't care if you give me a dollar. I want to work. And because offshore, you get a day rate. So if I'm diving or if I'm topside choking hose, you get paid the same rate. So as soon as you get to international waters, all the old timers like, take my dive. So I was able to smash out hundreds of dives. It would have taken me years in the States, right? And so then so I ended up getting picked up by the company and working in India and Sri Lanka and all these countries. And I went to Scotland for the deep saturation diving. And I loved that. I mean, you get in a big belly, you got 3 guys. And I used to joke in the bell, I'm like, can you imagine there's someone stuck in traffic right now going to work and we're in this bell just dropping to the bottom of the ocean. I mean, it was the dopamine and the environment, 30 days, 9 guys. Like, I really loved it. And it worked out great because I could still farm in Mansfield in the summer and help out. In the winter times was when all the oceans out there were clear. So I could work in our winters. And then that last time I was coming home, it was a wreck anyways. I got into Belgium and the terrorists blew up the airport. And I was in gate B and it messed up my hearing and I couldn't pass anymore.
So you got concussed.
Yeah, I was right at the gate, and then the terrorists end up having bombs set up in cars, and I've always said that too. You go to the emergency exit and it says, in case of emergency, everybody go here. Well, they had cars with bombs in the cars to get us all out there, and I mean, it was an absolute disaster. The whole building blew up, the whole front of that face and the percussion, and we got out there. Well, they pushed us down. I mean, I just came out of India. I was in shorts and flip-flops. And it was wintertime in Belgium. You just have this massive, zone. I had experienced some of it where, you don't want to roll underneath the car naturally and the tires will pop and squish you. And I mean, I had experience with, what to do and what not to do. And I told that guy, I'm like, I'm ex-military. Like, I'm not going there. I'm staying right behind this concrete barrier. He's like, you're good. I still had like a green military type backpack on. And finally they got us down into some big warehouse, but they had killed 1,200 people at the train. They killed the people at the airport. And so they didn't want to ship us on the roads thinking there might be another attack. So we got shacked up in the hangar. And yeah, it was an absolute disaster.
Wow. That has to kind of change your perspective of...
Yeah, I'm like, you guys tried to kill me for years when I was in your country, and that was one of the most peaceful countries in the world, and then they blow it up. You're like, holy cow. I mean, the whole thing was mind-boggling. The FBI actually sent me and my father back to Belgium to sit in the hearing when these people are being prosecuted, and the guy, one of them had the hand switch, right? So if you get shot, you still detonate. Well, one of those guys' bombs didn't go off. And I thought, and then they wrote letters to their moms, their sisters, and this is at the trial for all these murders. And I was like, I can't imagine, you've got a big basketball game going on or a big sale or you have all these things, you self-prep. And I'm just like, what in the world would go through your mind that then tomorrow you're going to strap on bombs and walk into an airport to murder these people? The
theology behind it is so extreme in a lot of cases, right? It's just
that was just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, evil's evil. Wow, and then so because of the hearing, then you had to stop the diving.
Yeah, it was the end of it. Because I mean, there's only a couple thousand sat divers in the world because there's anything, you get a motorbike accident, break your legs, then you get the bends. There's just all these injuries that you sustain. But I've met some older guys that have luckily got through, but most of it's a pretty kind of a young man's game, But I think we all want to be in control of our lives. I never would have ever expected stopping that, but life worked out.
So is it fairly boring on most waters deep, or did you see some wild stuff?
Oh man, it was never boring. There's sometimes you couldn't even see your hands, right? This is called zero viz. You're down there to grab someone's hat, you can't even see each other. Or there were times all the platforms are set up, 3 legs are an angle and the north leg is straight. That's because you get lost down there. But you got this bell and this umbilical. No man's ever walked there before. You don't know what you're going to find. You watch those movies about the monster fish and stuff. Yeah. And it's like you're down there working. We're not doing little stuff. We're talking, one bolt's 150 pounds. You're doing 36-inch pipelines and you're trying to hook them up and you only have X amount of minutes. Like in Mexico, even not even being sat, It was like you had drop in the water and you run to your job site on a rope. You get there, he's like, bring the tools down. And they're slinging them down. You have 15 minutes of work to get back, get up, hold for 15, jump in the bin, and you sit for 2 hours, right, for 15 minutes of work. That's where saturation comes in, where you're compressed. You stay compressed for the full 30 days, and so your body is always ultimately bent. But I've been coming across the leg before, and this big old whale shark, you're like, holy cow!
Swallowed whole.
And then always the guy up top who's running the comms and running the camera, because you have a camera on all the time, right? Get back, get a better view, or you're hanging off the platform and zero viz, and it just goes, and you're like, what was that? Really a lot of divers haven't been hurt by sea life. It's like, a larger fish comes by and catches your umbilical, and they just swim. Well, you get hooked, and they pull you up, and you ultimately die.
Your oxygen's connected to all
Yeah, and so it pulls you up, and you get bent, and then you get hurt if you're down there. And
I can see that would be pretty. If you're very far away, that risk could be real.
Yeah, and you got your umbilical and the currents ripping you out, and you're on the Arabian Sea, zero viz, and you're trying to climb around a platform, and you're getting hung up on everything, right? And you're chasing back, trying to pull your umbilical, get me tight. And then finally, when you get done, it's hard work and 9-hour shifts, and then you finally get back to the bin, and you're just like, pop your helmet off, and you sleep well, right? That's all you do.
Yeah, so wheat farming in Mansfield to deep sea. That's great. You've had a busy life, my friend.
Yeah, I always wanted to just kind of be always wanted to go to the Antarctica for 6 months, or just do these. I just love that kind of. Well, I think it started from being a farmer, right? It's like you plant the crop, then you pick your, you always have
seasonality.
Yeah, in the school you got summer, and then you go in the military, you're deploying, and you put X's on the calendar. Deep sea diving, you go out, you put X on the calendar, and then after that, I ended up taking the job at the city of Chelan. I'm like, there's not a calendar that has 25 years left in it, right? Like, that was a completely, different life for, like, wow, I got to do this for.
Well, it seems like now you're at the city of Chelan. What's your role there?
Development project manager.
So what does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, I do single family resident review for public works related items, stormwater, sewer, water, access, driveways, and then all your commercial properties. And then I do all the subdivisions for utilities, water, access, pedestrian facilities.
So you stay busy.
I'm very busy.
And then at the same time, your passion's still in Mansfield.
I'm very passionate.
Let's talk about your goals for Mansfield, your goals for the airport. I know you're very focused on, and you're on the Mansfield City Council?
Yep, Mansfield City Council.
Yeah. And the Douglas County Planning Commission.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me about what the vision is for Mansfield, and where does Mansfield sit today?
Well, I think to me it's very special. And I've been working on ways to have some healthy growth, because I think kind of like Chelan was a small orchard town, and it kind of got piecemealed together, right? Because there was no big foresight. And so like Mansfield, I look at it like, wow, a lot of the land around that town is owned by older farmers, and their kids aren't farming. There could be a chunk just sold, and someone comes in and just does whatever they want, and people think that you have power to prevent it. Well, this isn't Russia and China, right? It's like half the people want you to overregulate, and then the other half say it's a free society. And so I'm trying to work on like some good healthy growth and make it. I think we could supply this with good, like-minded working people, right? We don't have the capacity to take people that you need to help paying for, but just good. Our school has room for like 60 more students. We have great scores on the state test. It's safe, the crime level. And so like I'm trying to how do you market your community to have interest with people that say, it'd be worth a 25-minute drive for me, right? And so one of the things, I am on city council, and one of my projects I started was trying to build a community trail from Mansfield to Douglas to tie into the BLM trail system. And so we created the Douglas County Trail Association, and we got in with TREAD. And so then I became a board member on TREAD, because they do so much for this Chelan and Douglas County. I was just amazed by all the recreation they do. And so we started building I think we started building about 10 miles of it. And it's just like, man, all the cyclists that come down through, like what an amazing route along the Douglas Creek and up through the fields where and I was amazed by the people that thought, wow, you can see the sky. There's no light pollution, the wildlife, right. The flowers, it's just kind of a unique area that isn't overdeveloped.
Yeah, we have a project in Douglas County, and land, you know, and one of our goals is to maintain a dark sky covenant throughout the whole project. And I think that's one of those things I just visualized as a kid growing up in Manson. That was so special, you know, when you sleep out in the front yard with all your neighborhood buddies or whatever. Kids from Puget Sound don't often get that. They don't know what that means.
Or silence.
Look up and see stars, like they just don't get it. And I think to preserve that, I mean, that's one of those regulations that I'd be in favor of on all rural developments, even though it might be more expensive or whatever. You can do it now with technology in such a way that it still remains safe. You still have lighting, it's just not pollution. So I think, and I agree with you, I think Mansfield, you know, I'm a big fan. And I've sold a handful of places in my career to people, you know, that's so much more affordable that I always say, let me just take you there. Because until you've actually driven up there and kind of drove around, you kind of have this idea that it's a million miles away. Yeah. But it's like in today's world, going from the South Shore to Manson is about the same as going.
I joke that I go from Mansfield to work faster than people from Manson can get to work because there's no traffic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I did an overlay of like Seattle on top of Chelan to show how far. I mean, there's people driving from Ephrata to work in Chelan, and you do an overlay and you're like, geez, that's just up the street from, you know, downtown. That would be nothing. People are driving from North Bend to Seattle. I mean, that is really quite a little jaunt, and you're not in traffic bumper to bumper.
It's funny, the microeconomic climate, the political microeconomic climate. I'm sure you know, it's the same everywhere, right? So you just have less people. But let's say you had, I don't know, what's the population of Mansfield? 315 people. So I'm sure there's 50% of the people. They're like, I don't want to see another house built. I don't want no damn 206ers in my house. You know, like my dad used to, you know, like we're fine. We're fine.
Well, I mean, the demographics change dramatically though in that sense, because it's like, you know, the idea was like the older farmer would come to town and then the kid would take over the ranch. But like I took the whole town and said like people that are actually from there or people that came from down here. Right, and it's like, oh, they're from Manson, they're from Chelan, oh, they came up from Birchport. They're all kind of running, but they want that small town feel. They're really, so I go to door and talk to people about growth and what they expect and if they like it or not. And so, and I've talked to tons of people in the community, and there's it's a magic threshold of a population, right, where you can have like a bakery and a coffee shop, but you don't have to be stuck at a red light for, you know, 45 minutes. And so there's kind of this balancing act where, you know, you be ahead of the growth, you manage the growth, and you keep the aspects of a community you love and that community feel, but you still have healthy growth. And that's kind of been my approach to a lot of people in the community.
And they're overall, they get it, you think, for the most part?
I've actually been shocked by the people, because I'm like, okay, let me go to these vacant lots, knock on the doors, let them we'll build a house, sell it. And then the older people are saying, it's not gonna do it. You need to put a new road in. You need to put some new homes in. Like I was council in '82, or I was in council, you know, like you need to, the town was designed to go to the west. It was all designed to put in a road and build new homes. And so I was like, wow, I was surprised by that, you know. That's great, yeah. But there's a lot of that in my backyard too. It's built on the east side, you know.
That NIMBY mentality is something else. There's people that have said they in these groups that, I'll let them remain nameless, but I don't want a tourist to come to town. If I had my way, there'd be no tourists. And I remember saying to one of them, well, that's interesting because you're from somewhere else. So like, how did you find out about Chelan? Were you a tourist? Once?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just funny how, well, once I have my slice of heaven, I call it the slice of heaven mentality. But I think the size of Mansfield it'd be so easy to focus on, but it's really the same everywhere. We have a zoning code. We have conditional uses inside of the zoning code. We have requirements for infrastructure, and. So it's funny to me, it's almost like we have the laws, we have the planning. So when you take like Chelan County, people will tell me like, oh man, look at all this land. I'm like, okay, well, let's start looking at it. 88% of land's approximately is owned by the government, so now we're down to 12%. Now you see those mountains? Those are pretty steep mountains. So let's assume they're privately held. Most of it are, but let's assume it's privately held. We have a topography problem because it's going to be $1 million to build a road.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be out of bounds economically, so that's the economic problem. And then you have the zoning code, so you have a lot of our land in Chelan County was dictated originally in the late 90s by farmers who initially wanted to sue the state for the Growth Management Act legislation to be unconstitutional, like John Wall Sr. was kind of leading that charge, and he had a good point. Well, that ended up passing, and so they were like, all right, well, we're going to have 10-acre minimums and 20-acre minimums, so we're always going to be farmers, so then there's not that much left to actually develop, and then you have an infrastructure issue, and then you add lead arsenic to this situation. So by the time you really take this valley and this Chelan County and you narrow it down to what over the next 50 years can be done, it's a lot smaller than you might think if you're just looking at it and you don't understand all the supply constraints and the litigation. And that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about America. Anybody can sue anybody for anything if they have money. So you have to put that time, value, money in the litigation. And one of the things I always try to tell people is every time there's a fight, one of two things is probably going to happen. You're going to see more units, not less, even if the desire was to build less, because now it costs more. Or you're going to see something built there or not built there at all, right? And so if your economic obstructionism through litigation is just a delay tactic, it's time, value, money, right? So that goes back to what I said earlier about predictability and being the number one supply constraint is the lack of predictability in the code. But it's unfortunate because I think whether you agree or don't agree, if we have rules but we don't want to enforce them, or we don't want to look at them as a guide to what you can do, I always tell people, well, you want to sell your house now. Well, what if I told you you can't? Isn't that right? And if I just said you can't sell your house anymore, sorry, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
I'm going to use eminent domain. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put a park there. How would you feel? So it's irony to me is that the private property rights individual is very strong in that idea, and then unless they're not benefiting or unless, you know what I mean? Like if we have the rules, let's get involved early. If you want to talk about change, get involved early and start talking about zoning changes and start talking about and learning about compliance with the Growth Management Act and that you said earlier, all these layers of things that aren't really talked about openly unless you're in the planning commission or unless you're in the city council or a county commissioner, then you're talked to pretty aggressively.
Yeah, I read a documentary that was put together by HUD in like during the Great Recession, right? And it was multiple government agencies, all with an agenda that were working against each other, right? Where it's, who wouldn't want to conserve a big chunk? But if you have a corporate boundaries and you have this big conserved area in the middle, then you can't grow, right? And then you turn around and give loans to people who can't afford them, and the supply and demand, and then it just kept jacking up all those prices, and to the point where they weren't worth that. Then people were doing reverse mortgages until the point, you have a $2 million house and the bank comes back and everything's worth $450 and all that lost revenue. And so there has to be a balancing act between preserving conservation and new development, because if you take, it's a pretty easy schematic when you say you have this many people and this many people are having kids, there's not enough homes. That's without issues of immigration or people moving in from outside. I mean, there is a massive matrix. And I mean, I'm always, like as a city staffer, what's your opinion? Well, if I had an opinion, I'd be horrible at my job, right? Like you have to, I start, I'm like, I don't care if you have $2 or $2 billion. Like everybody gets the exact thing. And people are like, well, why can't you do this? And like you're talking, there's all this other bureaucracy that we have no control of, right? And so I always like to tell people, I'm not God, I'm the preacher. I'm just reading the good book passed by counselor. I have no freedoms. Yeah, right. Like, can I shrink this? It's like, this is the only thing that we can do. And is it right or wrong? Like, I don't get that ability, right? That's coming from Olympia that mandates us to follow these in council. I mean, the power that you probably had in councils and mayors even 20 years ago was so much greater in the planning commission, right? Or people see, oh my gosh, what are they doing next to me? And then they come in and gripe. It's like, well, that went through the legal process. Like that's all legal.
That's what I mean by early. If you want to have that change, it takes years, not days. And I also tell people, like, try to be empathetic of people that have good intentions. They're not all evil capitalist going to go buy 300 more yachts. I mean, that's not how most people hear. There are other places that are much more profitable. Yes. That are much more predictable for corporate money.
But like the utilities dictate capacity, not the other way. People are like, well, we want this. It's like, well, it's $10 million to get there. You can't build 3 houses. It's like, okay, what does it cost to get from point A to point B? This is the cost. This is how many houses can be built, right? No one's out there spending their own money and losing money to put new homes in, and then they're demonized. But in the same sense, if it wasn't for those people taking that risk, because I've heard developers tell me a story about Bend, Oregon, and even developers around here that, phase 1, what they received, heck, they're getting more in phase 2 than they almost got the whole phase 1 in one lot. Just the economy, inflation, and dealing with the risk factor. I mean, there's just as many people out there with horror stories than there are guys that made it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I see it all the time, and I always tell people also just to think about this. If you bought a lot right over there and you had a dream, and you were gonna, you went to high school here, you went to college, you got some money, and you were gonna come home and you bought a residential lot, and then after you bought it, they said, I'm sorry, a bunch of people came here and said, I really like that vacant lot because, first of all, you're gonna block my view if you build there, and I like my view, I've had my view a long time, and secondly, it's like we have too many homes, so we're not gonna let you build. Mm-hmm. You don't have a problem with that, right? And that's the part about predictability. If you don't have the zoning code and the ordinances that are already in place, if they're not real, if people can't count on them, you're not going to see another home built. It's going to be the only homes you do see are $2 million homes, $3 million homes, because that's the only, when you spend that much money to get to a place where you can go vertical, you can't build a $2 million home and sell it for $500,000. Yep. So it's this working together concept that I would just love to see people say, yes, we need affordable homes, but therefore we need to help each other find a way that the infrastructure becomes less expensive in an area that doesn't get litigated in court. And if we all work together, that's what theoretically the zoning code is for. Yep. We will have the cows in the country and the people in the city, but there's a lot in between. And I just always encourage people to, and people like yourself that are articulate, that really kind of aren't afraid to get involved. So I admire that about your work. And I'm glad you made it through the diving, the private contracting, you've had a terrorist attack. I bet you're glad to be back in Mansfield after that. Oh boy, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I traveled all over. When it came to raising my kids, I was like. And you got 2 kids? 2 kids. I mean, they've been my greatest accomplishment in my entire life. 9 and 7, is that what they were? 9 and 7, yeah, Nash and Stella. And I mean, they were really my life. If I'm coaching baseball, helping coach basketball, I mean, and just watching them actually get to live. Not like I go to and see friends in other areas, and it's like, man, they're not really living. It's like the greatest prison we ever created, we call society in the modern times. Get outside. Get outside, yeah. Mine are 32 and 28, and I have an 8-year-old and 3-year-old grandsons. So they go from 7 to 9. Yeah, quick. I don't know how they got older and I stayed younger, but Yeah. I don't think that's true. But it is fun to watch, and it is fun to be a part of, and we are blessed to grow up here. And I've been talking a bit, so I appreciate your time. Thanks for all you do. And do you have anything else you want to share? Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoy your podcast and learn more about people, and so I appreciate it. All right, sir. Well, sign off then. Thanks. One more time, Small Towns Unscripted.